Pricing. Yes, it is a strategy, and we're going to talk about being the most effective with your pricing strategy in today's episode of The Den. The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. Today, we're going to be talking about pricing strategy. Yes, pricing your home is a strategy. How do you navigate those waters? But before we get to that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, hand me the rockberry. Melissa, let's go, Glasgow. Aspen, the Ninja Gruen. And the boss, Shannon, Martin Martinez. My name is Ben Lyons, and I'm your host of The Den, top brokers taking on tough questions. And today's question is, what should I price my home at? In other words, depending on the market, is there different pricing strategies? So you have a buyer's market, you have a seller's market, and we're going to talk about different strategies for those markets, or maybe just a unilateral strategy across the board. So Shannon, I'm going to kick it off with you today. Let's talk a little bit about this. What would be your assessment for today's market? Is it more of a buyer's market, more of a seller's market, or somewhere in between?
I think we're definitely still in a seller's market. It's cooled a little, it's changing. But I think that it's important to remember whenever you're pricing your house for sale, understand where the market is at that particular time. Because some people say, my neighbor sold down the street, they had 3 offers, and that was 4 months ago. And it doesn't seem like a long time, but a lot can change with, interest rates and where have jobs gone, or are we in the middle of an election? There are so many things that change those components. So I think it's important that you just understand what's going on in the market. I think really the important thing is have a realtor that understands how to look at everything. I don't just look at the last 3 months sales for a market analysis. I also look at what's currently on the market. I look at, try to gauge how many buyers do we have sitting and waiting. If I know that I've got at least 3 or 4 people that have had their feelers out for months, that tells me that, inventory is short. We can probably be a little bit more aggressive. Are you in a great neighborhood? Are you in a neighborhood where everything sells fast? Are you in a neighborhood where there's already 3 things on the market? Looking at every single component before you price is the important thing. So I think just having an experienced realtor that can look at the big picture and not just what your neighbors sold for 3 months ago or something is probably the best thing to do.
So you take really a holistic approach to pricing properties. I mean, you're looking at all factors. You're looking at the market itself, maybe your current buyer pool, just the pulse, is it spring? Is it summer? Is
Correct.
it, what time of year is it? And how does that parlay into the pricing? So let me ask you this. Would you rather price, when I say a little more aggressively in today's market, which means you have a little bit lower price to encourage activity, or would you price a little bit higher and let the market tell you where?
Well, I think that also depends on your seller. They have specific needs too. Some people say, I just got to get rid of this property. I got to get rid of it right now. And then you have other people that say, you know what? We're just kind of filling it out. We want the best we can for this. This is our retirement. We want as much as we can out of it. Whatever may be their individual need. You have to take that into consideration as well. I think sometimes people think that if you just let's just price it high. What can it hurt? It's a hot market. We can get a lot, but you might miss out on those escalation clauses. You might miss out on the excitement of all the buyers. Sometimes pricing it right at market value, let the market run it up. That happens as well.
Gosh, I threw her a curveball and she just smacked it out of the park. Oh my gosh. No tricking you. I love that. That was a great answer.
Well, I am old.
Yeah,
I've done it a while.
Well, me and you are on that same train, aren't we? But great points. I mean, really, because you have to factor in the sellers and their motivation. So you also have to factor in, the house itself, the area, things like that. So Aspen, what are your thoughts when you're working with a seller right now? Do you tend to price a little bit higher and work your way down, or do you try to find the pulse of the market and let it build itself up? Or what are your thoughts on pricing strategy?
I think the only time you could really get away with pricing it super high and just that you still got multiple offers was really during COVID. I think now you have to have your market or your finger on the pulse a little bit more. You have to know what is a competitive price, and that still might be on the high end, but you don't want to discourage people from even looking or coming in and seeing it. And like Shannon said, you still can get multiple offers in this market and it still can sell really quickly. You don't want your house to sit there for months it just kind of stigmatizes the property a little bit, and people end up just glancing over it.
Understood. Yeah. So time on the market is a factor.
Definitely.
Yeah. What would you think is the tipping point? Is like 2 months, 3 months?
Right now,
Yeah.
I feel like 2 weeks to a
2
month.
weeks, yeah.
People are kind of like, well, why hasn't it sold yet?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we'll probably get back to, 4 months to 6 months to sell a house. But right now, I think anything, especially over 30 days, is people are kind of wondering why it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's direct pushback from the market.
And that depends on the price too. If it's a price that most people in the area can't afford, then it's probably going to sit a little bit longer. Commercial is always going to sit longer. But I'm, a normal priced house, or in this area, anything under 400,000. And then in Durango, anything under $1 million. If it's priced correctly, it'll
Should
still
move
sell. Yeah.
pretty quick. So Melissa, what are your thoughts on, we've seen these strategies before where you have a $500,000 house and they price it at $450 just to get the market to bid up.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you get to the net same spot? Is it an advantage to doing that? Is it a big gamble?
I think it's a gamble because, like Aspen had just touched on during, COVID, it's been a long time since we've been in a buyer's market. So statistically, we are in a seller's market, but buyers are definitely not jumping to conclusions so quickly. Interest rates since 2020 have doubled. So they're not going to let a lower quality product pass as quickly as they did during that time because interest rates were so low. So I think it's a gamble because yes, you could price it a little low and hope that you'll get multiple offers, but that season of buyers that are looking that weekend or whatever, they may be much more conservative than they were, than they would have been. So it's a gamble. It's hard. It's hard to say because even if you have a seller that absolutely wants to list at the very top end of your recommendation, but you're kind of worried about it, it's hard. It's hard to know. You might get somebody that will be willing to take it, but if they're going from a 3% mortgage to a 7% mortgage, they're not going to do it. So you're going to sit on market.
Understood.
Yeah.
I like to price low always.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's worth 500,000 and if they would price it at 450,000, I think you're going to sell it for 525.
Yeah.
That's typically, it is a gamble, but that's typically how it.
You get the competitive nature.
I would
of
rather
people.
gamble going in lower to get higher bids than going in higher and it sit on market and we're on our
definitely.
second price reduction now. We're on our third price reduction.
Because I think people don't understand that. They feel like, well, they can offer lower. I know what it's going to sell for. I'm just going to ask this.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that a lot of people won't, and the showings are going to drop off and people start losing interest. They see it. They've seen it now for a couple of weeks on the MLS. They don't even want to go look at it anymore.
Right.
And at the end, you really are going to sell it probably right where we told you were. But now you've just wasted a lot of time on the market. So sometimes that trying to go high, it's just not the right strategy.
Yeah.
I think NAR put out that if you price your house too high, that it will end up selling for 20% lower.
Is that see, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gets a stigma along. That's the part of the 20% lower is it gets a stigma.
Yeah.
Now, not all. Some of the higher end homes, there's just been a compression of demand because of the interest rates going up.
Yes.
So those are expected to sit a little bit longer. But if you're talking about in this market, $300,000 home, even up to a $400,000 home, then the demand should be there. You should be able to bubble right up to the top. And in the Durango market, anything under $1 million,
Yeah.
like I said, is
Hard to find.
Yeah, it's hard to find. And
Yeah.
people are going to jump all over that, which is fascinating because it's kind of counterintuitive. You would think price higher and work your way down. Give yourself some room. We hear that from sellers all the time. But you do get a splash effect when you hit the market, right? Every new listing that hits the market gets some splash, right? Where they're going to generate some activity. How does that hurt, Paul, if you don't capture the splash? I mean, you've been to a lot of water parks, Cannonball, the Jackknife.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
The Mankini. I mean, come on.
Are we on real estate?
Oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. So what are your thoughts on the splash effect?
We don't do in this area coming soons. So the splash effect is as soon as something new comes on the market, everybody's, it gets a bunch of views online. And usually if you've priced it well, it'll get a lot of showings. Like I like to go towards the weekends. Most people can look at houses on the weekends. So if you go Thursday or Friday, people are scheduling for the weekends to look at it. If you don't get a lot of showings over the weekends, you probably missed that mark on the pricing. or your picture. There's just something wrong with the house. And you're all talking about, and I didn't get the chance because you messed it up to say I agree with everybody. But I think if you have the right house, you have the ability to go low and try to get those escalation clauses and multiple offers. If you have a house that could use a little bit of repairs, then the pricing strategy has to change. Either you fix them ahead of time before you go on, and then you can price lower, bring the price up. But if there are some disadvantages to the home, you have to factor that in when pricing.
Yeah. And sometimes you won't know that until you go to market, right? Like you don't know how people are going to respond to a really nice home without a garage.
Right.
Maybe it's perfect for someone because they have a little carport and a little car and they just want the single level very nicely redone. And then you may go to market and have no one that's interested because it doesn't have the garage. Maybe it's at a tipping point with the price that they really want a garage. So some factors like that you just don't know until you go to market. But how important is it, and this is a question for anyone, to adjust quickly if the market isn't showing signs that is there for the price point?
That's very important. I think that when people are seeing they've put their house on the market, we've explained to them that it might be a little bit too high, and they say, no problem, I can always come down, but then they want to wait 2 or 3 months to do that. I think that's where your mistake is. You should know if you've gotten numerous showings in the first week and no offers, that there's something going on.
And not only no offers, but if you're getting no feedback, that's your feedback.
That's right. Yeah. Saying nothing says a lot. People are not interested in it.
Yep.
Or coming up with random things like, I didn't like the step down into the living room. Right. Or, I just didn't like the overall floor plan or something to that effect. Well, at a certain price point, and this is the conversation I have with sellers, is a certain price point, you don't get that.
Those don't matter.
You've just overcome all of the objections to the neighborhood, the uniqueness of the floor plan.
It's always price.
It's always price.
Always price. I mean, the pictures can be bad. The marketing cannot be very good. And that can maybe hinder people getting into your house. But if you post a $400,000 house for $100,000, I guarantee you're going to get a lot of offers. Like it's always price. That's really what it comes down to.
Right.
So pricing is really important.
Yeah. So how much time do you put into your market analysis? I mean, to really dial in that price?
Not much time.
Yeah.
I feel like after a certain amount of time, it takes me 15 minutes. To
get your market analysis done?
For a general house. Yeah. If it's like a really unique property or if it's commercial and I'm having to pull numbers or replacement cost or things like that, maybe a few hours, or
if it's not in a neighborhood that's had, 20 sales in the last year, if it's out near the river or whatever, it's going to take longer to do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think we run into more in this area specifically is because we're not in Phoenix, right? Where there's 1,000 homes that have just sold. And you can, it'll take
And the majority of it is tract housing. You're going to look right in the same neighborhood or in the similar type home. Here we have a lot of unique homes where sometimes you got to be creative. You don't have something that looks just like all the other ones.
Yeah. So let me ask this then, a little bit of a loaded question. We see people that have all kinds of forms of creative marketing, right? How effective is the creative marketing when it may just boil down to the price? I mean, you can shout it from the rooftops, but it may be a price issue. Is there any leeway there to grab a little extra money with creative marketing? So here's some thoughts on that. I mean, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things if a realtor is really creative with their marketing?
I think it matters. I think marketing always matters. I mean, you're going to get more people in the house. You're going to get more people looking at it. If you have people walking out of the house when someone else is walking in because you marketed it really well, it's priced well, and people are going to feel the pressure and the demand for the house. But if you're just taking cell phone pictures and your finger's kind of in the way, and maybe you only put it on the MLS and just wiped your hands of it, you're probably not going to get as many showings as if you would have put in the time and money. And getting it ready too, which we talked about in a previous one, making sure it's ready to list.
Yeah. So for example, let's just say you have a $300,000 house, right? And I talk to sellers about this, but maybe you have this like ebb and flow. It's like a wave. It's an ebb and flow of what you may be able to get for your home. And that may be a $15,000 or $20,000 swing, depending on how you time it, price it, market it, things like that, capture the splash effect. And so your goal is to kind of catch the peak of the wave of what you can get for that, reasonably get for that property. Otherwise, you're on the other side where if you price too high, you work your way down. That goes back to the stat that you talked about earlier. Is now all of a sudden, instead of getting $305 for that $300,000 property, you're getting $290 or $285 because you've waited too long. You've pulled all the marketing levers or you haven't done enough marketing on it. And there's a detriment to the overall value. If you were to price a commercial property, let's say, how much more important is the pricing component with commercial? Any thoughts there?
I wouldn't say it's more important, but it's definitely more involved. There's so many different types of pricing strategies that you would have to look at, whether it's cap rate, income approach, replacement cost. You need to know what your earnings before interest, taxes, all of that is. So the numbers can get a lot more complicated, especially if they're taking advantage of any tax loopholes or anything. I mean, you need to really analyze what you're getting and putting out. But also, it's probably in this area, it's going to take longer to sell. You have to be a little bit more patient. I wouldn't jump on a price reduction in a week or two. I'd probably let it sit for a while.
Yeah. And commercial is very much tied to, and I just asked that question just for our viewers to hear an answer. Commercial is a lot more tied to what income are you making? The income drives the value to a large degree. I mean, there are some other aspects, location, things like that. But by large and far, it's the income that drives and the potential, the highest and best use for that property. Has anyone done an auction? Aspen, you've done one?
I have not done an auction.
Yep. So I did one. I did two, actually. One was with a home in the Las Vistas subdivision, and it was an absolute auction, which means that the final bid is it. Like the seller agreed, I'm going to the block. The buyers have to come in. We had like a 2-month run up to it. Buyers had to put $25,000 non-refundable. Well, I should say this refundable, but if they won the bid and didn't end up performing, they lost that money. So every buyer was vetted. And this wasn't a small home. This was $1 million property. And the whole point of this was kind of, to your point, Aspen, was pushing up the competitive nature of buyers. I have to say, I think we brought the market. The market responded. People got excited and into the bidding war component. And it drove that price up to where we thought it would probably sell anyways in the open market. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I was a little bit like, well, we could have just reduced down to that and maybe got it. But it was a quick way, and they were liquidating the asset that day. They knew there was a closing done at the end of that auction.
And that actually created some pretty good excitement, because I can remember we did have it on the MLS. We had it on the market. We had a nice open house. We had other brokers over. We had people view it. And although it was beautiful and everybody wanted it, there was no takers, there was no buyers. But as soon as we did the auction, it did create a different feel. And we had numerous people looking at it. And even the buyer that bought it was a local person that could have bought it when it was on the MLS. but I think maybe just the pressure, the excitement, just the build up to it was not there. So that was a great marketing strategy for that property.
Yeah. A little risky though, wasn't it? I mean, you get a lot of people in there. Let's say you have 7 registered bidders, and their top dollars are $500,000 or $600,000, and they're going, yeah, I could get this for $500,000 or $600,000. It's $1 million property, and the seller's going, well, I'm hoping that a couple of these bidders are willing to pay up to $1 million. I don't want to really sell it less, but I'm obligated to at that point. It's a risky strategy, but it worked. It paid off. Any thoughts? Any more thoughts on creative marketing, auction? You know what, Paul?
No.
The thing we got there, the blower, the big guy that we can do one of those.
Where?
The
Out
next house.
So in the creative marketing, I think the product is probably the driver of all of it. If you have a bad product, all the marketing in the world is going to get you what it's worth or less. It seems to be the trend in this area now that we're pricing everything at such a point that all of us just go, that's ridiculous. I can't believe that would be that much money. The buyers are seeing that too. And that's why none of these places are selling. I haven't been in the past one to go under, hope for the best, hope for the escalation clauses. But knowing what we have out there, a price that everybody goes, that's affordable, I can see how that would be in this market right now, especially with high interest rates and all that. That would be a lot better pricing strategy now.
It really is about finding the sweet spot on each individual place.
Yes.
There's a lot of factors in there.
Yeah, and the market's been super forgiving to price points. Like people just throw out price point the last couple of years, and I mean the market would just respond immediately. You knew right away if you were way out of whack. If you were anywhere close, right? What they call it, hand grenades and alligators. Like if you were in anywhere close.
Horseshoes.
Alligators. So I mean, you were close.
Don't get close to an alligator.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
What are you talking about?
Chomp. So if you're anywhere close to the pricing the last couple of years, you would get an offer. You would get the activities. That's changed a bit. So I think pricing is very much on the radar nowadays because we're starting to see the pushback from buyers and sellers, of course, still wanting yesterday's prices,
Right.
but not being able to get that. So
I want to tell a story here real quick. When I was starting out, I had this house. I forget which one it was, but I was like, it should go here. There's no reason it shouldn't sell for this. Every house in the neighborhood's been selling for this. I can't believe it won't. You had a conversation with me and you listened to me complain for about 30 minutes and said, if you priced it at $100,000 today, would it sell? I was like, of course. Well, then it's always price. Always. So when they're sitting for too long, anybody that's listening, when it's sitting, just try to adjust the price down.
Yep. It doesn't matter if it's a quirky floor plan, if there's repairs needed, if
there's always a buyer.
Yeah, there's always a buyer at a certain price point. It's a tipping point. We just had an example of a listing that you had, Shannon, where you told this seller where it should be priced at. And the seller's like, great, thank you. But I want to price $60,000, $70,000 higher.
Right.
And then it didn't sell. It didn't sell. We got some activity, but it didn't sell. It didn't sell. They worked their way down a little bit. Eventually, after almost a year.
No, it was just a few months.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was
like a year.
Oh my gosh. Felt like a year. But after maybe a few months, they ended up selling it right where you had told them it would sell for. Right. Now, and they were lucky there because it could have been a lot worse. Yes. And if they would have priced there originally, they may have actually.
They would have gotten that, or they probably would have gotten the excitement and maybe had, but because you know probably where it's going to be. And so if you start around there, you're going to get your offers around there or a little excitement to push it up. But yeah, I don't see any point in really aiming a lot higher than what it's worth.
Yeah. Understood. Well, let's get to the speed round real quick because we got to get through the rest of the podcast. Final thoughts. In today's market, should you price low, right in line, or high and work your way down? Paul Berry.
I think I just said it. I think right now, pricing low or pricing aggressively is probably the best strategy right now.
In today's market.
Listen to your realtor. This is why you're hiring your realtor. Go with what they are suggesting.
Great answer. Aspen?
That wasn't an answer.
Hey, that was a politician. She's a politician now.
Okay. Madam President.
Madam President. Madam President-elect.
I think it depends on the property because I always do my CMAs. And like I said, they take me about 15 minutes. But you can walk into a house and be like, no, this is generally what people are going to like. Let's bump it up 20,000 over the CMA and go from there. And people love that. But I think most of the time, pricing aggressively, even low, even really low is probably the way to go because that excitement you just can't recreate any other way.
So that splash effect is huge. Yep. Shannon?
I think you just find the sweet spot for that individual property. Look at what's going on in the neighborhood. I think there's not a one size fits all. You find that house, if you know that there's been 20 houses sold in that neighborhood in the last 12 months and they all sat on the market less than 5 days and they've all sold at, a certain amount and yours is really remarkably different than anyone else's, you know where it's going to sell. So, there's really going to be no reason to try to go high, try to go low. But then there are other ones where you have unique properties and I think you just find the individual sweet spot for that place.
Yeah, fair enough. And I would agree.
Listen to your realtor.
Listen to your realtor. That's why you hire a realtor. My gosh, they can make you a lot of money versus you trying to do this yourself and trying to figure out the market. So that's why you hire a professional. But on to my favorite part of the podcast. Paul Berry, you ready for this?
For what?
The Lyons Pride.
Oh, yeah.
So as fellow members of the Lyons Group, we invest in our local community. We do things to help our community in all ways possible. And we like to recognize people, events, organizations that do the same in a section called the Lyons Pride. Paul, you're up today.
Well, mine is, I'm actually prepared.
You are. You did.
Mine is Tom Yost with the first T. First T of San Juan County. Is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah.
First T. He has been working over there for a long time. I met him at Leadership San Juan 2013.
Great program, by the way.
Leadership San Juan's a great program. The First Tee has been helping kids for a long time. And one of the things that he's done recently is he's been putting on sponsored events for veterans, golf tournaments. I think he does a spring, summer, and a fall one. And I was a part of it last year. great group of people. We've had some good sponsors. Vince Moffitt was a sponsor, and it's actually a very good program. I've had a lot of fun doing that, meeting other veterans in the area. So I want to thank Tom Yost.
Yes. Awesome.
Very nice.
Yeah. Great selection. Tom, if you're listening to this, just know that we hear what Paul just said. And of course, we see you in the community. Thank you for doing all the wonderful things you do. He's got a beautiful family, wonderful kids. I think both 2 kids, if I remember right.
I think so.
Yep. And
Both
they're
good golfers.
incredible golfers. He's done a lot in our local community with our youth. Tom, thank you for all of that. Thank you for taking time to take care of our youth and also the veterans. What a great program. So we appreciate you. Welcome to the Lyons Pride. So that's today's episode. Next episode, we're going to be discussing construction trends. So shag carpet back? Is it back?
We can hope.
Did it ever leave?
Did it ever?
Not in my mom's bathroom.
Fair point. Well, we're going to discuss that and more on the next episode. If you would like to see us talk about a specific topic in real estate, put a comment down below and we will respond to you, and let's have a good conversation. You can schedule a consultation with any one of the members of the Lyons Group. Go to sjcbroker.com. Follow us at Facebook. We have an Instagram, a TikTok, a YouTube channel. We're all over, and we love to keep you apprised of today's real estate market and help you get an advantage whether you're buying or selling. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time in The Den. Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.